Recovery Monday, trauma, and how it can be dealt with, and how you can be healed. Today live on Recovery
Restoring
Monday.
Hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope, open my eyes to see the world through different eyes, revealing your light, restoring hope.
Welcome. It's the 22nd day of June in the Lord's year 2015. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is Recovery Monday, brought to you by the good folks at Powell CDC. You now have someone you can call. You now have a friendly face. You have a phone number, 263-2424. You got a Facebook friend in Lila or Bob or me. You now have somebody to turn to when the worst of the worst happens. You all of a sudden discover that somebody in your family, somebody in your circle, somebody in your church, somebody that you care about is suffering from drugs and alcohol abuse. And that's what this program is about, and we appreciate the opportunity to bring it to you. As we do the broadcast today, you may be a brand new listener because all of a sudden you find this brand new radio station because if things go well, probably here in the next 24 hours or so, we'll be at a full power. And you'll know that because you'll be able to get us all across central Iowa, and you'll also probably be able to get us in the house, which we've never been able to get in the house. So thank you for being here. I have one of my favorite guests with me today. And by the way, Lila, I just want to thank you for getting this gentleman and having him continually come back. Well, I mean, you get the thanks too, but it was you that discovered him. And so I greatly appreciate that. Dr. Geral Blanchard, correct?
Geral Blanchard.
Geral, put that microphone just a little bit closer to you. There you go. Say your first name again.
Geral.
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 No D.
Correct.
Dr. Geral Blanchard. And he is, in my opinion, and you don't have to believe me, but I think in the next 56 minutes you'll agree with me, he's kind of brilliant. He's figured out what he is passionate about and how to help other people do it. And to me, that's brilliance. You know, when you can figure out something you're passionate about and make it work for you, but then turn around and help countless others, man, that's hero status right there. At least I know in my life, the counselor that came alongside me for almost 5 years before I quit drinking enabled me to finally say I can put the bottle down now. And so I very much appreciate the work that you do and the people that you've helped and saved and families you've made a difference with. Today we're going to talk about trauma. Now, would I be incorrect in saying this isn't all about physical trauma? This is really more about emotional trauma?
Emotional trauma, spiritual trauma. It may be bodily trauma. It can arrive. It can show up in a lot of different ways for us.
All right. So trauma is trauma. How it comes to us, what road we go down to get there is all different.
Indeed. But what it does have in common, no matter the trauma, is that it seems like an overwhelming, sudden, unexpected adversity that just consumes us, frightens us. It may even feel life-threatening, whether it is or not. And so it's that overwhelming experience that frightens us.
Okay. And by the way, he's got a couple books out, Geral does, and it's Transcending Trauma, I got to get my glasses closer here, Post-Traumatic Growth Following Physical, Sexual, and Emotional Abuse, and also Ancient Ethics for Today's Healers. And it's Geral, G as in God, E-R-A-L, Geral, last name Blanchard, B as in boy, L-A-N-C-H-A-R-D, and those books are available Amazon.
Or straight from the publisher. Transcending Trauma comes from Safer Society Press, Ancient Ways from Neary, Neari.com.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So what are the most common... Here's what I want to accomplish in today's show. Somebody out there listening is going to hear something you say or something we're going to say, and they're going to go, oh, my gosh, that's blank. That's me. That's Bob. That's my son. That's my husband. So that's hopefully my goal today, is to bring this to the forefront so people can understand that it's not just a soldier coming home from Iraq that suffers in trauma. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And it isn't that trauma necessarily has a lasting and indelible impact upon us. What I will say today, and the message I'd like to get out to your listeners, is that for a great number of people, trauma is like a catalyst. It is the engine that drives personal growth, so that our focus doesn't have to be about enduring or coping with trauma. Our focus doesn't even have to be about bouncing back from trauma. We can thrive. In other words, bounce forward after trauma. That's the perspective I talk about. So instead of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, today I'm talking about PTG, which is post-traumatic growth. And it's not just a wishful hope and a prayer. This is reality for so many people. They take difficult situations, respond to them in a unique way that pushes them, helps them lunge forward in their life. So that I work from the premise that what doesn't kill you may actually help you grow.
Yeah, what's that old saying? What doesn't kill me will make me stronger?
Yeah.
You know,
And
just the
oftentimes it
words growth in there gives you hope instead of staying stuck in the problem. You know, it just, I love hearing it. It
Well, and that's-
automatically frees you.
We want to get that message to our kids. We want to give that to soldiers, to anyone experiencing trauma, so that seed is planted that trauma doesn't always mean your demise, your downfall. Trauma can be that engine that drives you forward. You know, it's grist for the mill, as some people say.
But it's discovering that you've been traumatized and walking through it. That is where the growth comes.
Yeah, it's the process of walking through it, and how you do that, how you navigate those turbulent, chaotic waters, those painful waters, that's the key.
All right. Now, is someone, I know the answer to this. People who suffer from trauma can suffer at age blank to age blank? I mean, unlimited?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it seems like we get a lot of people in Powell who have hidden the trauma or tried to deal with it themselves for so many years. And as a result, they've been drinking to deal with it. And it seems like around, I don't know, late 30s, early 40s, it just doesn't work anymore to hide it or to try to control it. And then it's out of control.
It's like a volcano waiting for the time it erupts. And then some set of circumstances can just congeal or come together that reawakens that old wound, and boom,
Yeah.
it's in your lap. But I think addiction oftentimes is a constant use of pain relievers. And so much of the time we tell people, you got to get off alcohol, you got to get off drugs because they're going to kill you. But people struggle with recovery when we take away their pain relievers and leave them with their
The pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that pain oftentimes comes from unresolved trauma. So that's where we befriend them. We create a safe environment, a secure environment with realistic hope about their recovery, and guide them down a new path, not just the common television variety of PTSD recovery, but a little more sophisticated path.
All right. Now, you used a word that really caught my attention. Realistic. Unpack that for me.
I'm glad you caught it, because I tried to emphasize it. The last thing I want to do is be imparting hope, especially false hope, for people about recovery, because that can traumatize them. It can be another form of betrayal like they underwent in their trauma. So no false hope. But if we look at the numbers of people who go through trauma and those who do not merit the diagnosis of PTSD, and over 90% don't merit the diagnosis of PTSD after trauma, that says to me, realistically, you may not go down an everlastingly painful path. So I want to give people realistic hope about what are the chances that they won't develop PTSD, and what's the recipe for those who have recovered successfully. What's the recipe or the path they took that lifted them out of it? And if those are all reality stories I'm telling to these people, they latch onto the story, and it's comforting and it gives them hope. But if their only thought, their only mantra is that trauma causes your destruction, they will have destruction.
Dr. Geral T. Blanchard. And I keep saying doctor. You're not a doctor.
No, and it's Geral.
Geral.
Think of
Blanchard.
Jerry.
Jerry. I'm just terrible with names. I'm sorry. Geral T. Blanchard. 2 books, Transcending Trauma, Post-Traumatic Growth Following Physical, Sexual, and Emotional Abuse, and Ancient Ethics for Today's Healers. Is the journey... Well, let me restate this. Is the journey harder discovering what the trauma was, or is the journey harder after discovering what the trauma is than growing past it?
The latter. The key...
Oh, nuts. I was hoping it would be the first.
Just discovering something sometimes makes life worse.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to face now what memories have come up or what I'm told I have as a diagnosis. On the other hand, how I respond on the journey of recovery is critical. Mac, there's a big difference between how we react and how we respond to trauma. And those are 2 words that I really want to emphasize: react and respond. One is like a knee-jerk instinct reaction, and the other is more thoughtful. How am I going to respond to this horrible event that happened to me? How can I studiously and thoughtfully approach this problem so I turn this tragedy into a triumph? So
I can see that with just those 2 words. I mean, like one of them, it's their automatic response. They just automatically go there. And the other one is stepping back and looking at it and taking their time figuring it out.
Yep. And, the second one is about detachment. That's responding. But the first, that reaction is almost instinctive, and it's a cultural message we send to our citizens. Because if you go to indigenous cultures in Peru and Africa, where they're not told trauma will destroy you, it doesn't. So we have this default state we go to when we're told of trauma, like, oh my gosh, it's going to be awful. Ain't it awful? And we go there. So we want people to have other options as to how to think so they can respond thoughtfully to what's happened.
I see that all the time in treatment when people are afraid of the pain. I mean, when we say you can't drink or use drugs while you're here, but we haven't told them what we're going to do. And then they just their automatic response is, I can't do without this.
Yeah, they're in unfamiliar terrain.
Yeah.
And trauma was unfamiliar terrain.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know if they could count on people to be there for them. So now we're saying give up your best friend, your drug, your alcohol, and have a good life.
Yeah.
And it's rarely that simple.
I was wondering if it's not a matter of giving up or reducing the pain through drugs and alcohol, because you mentioned that. That's what they're doing to try to heal the pain.
Yeah.
Does it have to be drugs and alcohol? Could it be other things that you use?
Great question, because addiction is, we tend to think of it as the misuse or overuse of a mood-altering drug. But sometimes we use mood-altering experiences, mood-altering behaviors to make us feel better. Compulsive eating, compulsive gambling, compulsive use of sex. But if you'll work with the definition I like for addiction, the answer becomes clear. If addiction is the excessive use of pleasure and excitement to obliterate my pain, we know we can get pleasure and excitement from drugs. Cocaine, heroin can numb you out, Budweiser can slow you down, or we can get we can increase pleasure and excitement by going to something sexual. Even a thought can change one's mood instantly. Engaging in sex can change one's mood and alter it. So experiences are addictive just like drugs are. Same basic activity is going on.
All right, we're going to take our first break. Our guest today is Geral T. Blanchard, 2 books, Transcending Trauma and Ancient Ethics for Today's Healers. We're talking about trauma. If you've got questions, 244-0055. It's your voice I'd like to hear today on Restoring Hope. Brought to you by Unity Point.
A father who is was headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation, to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
It's the 22nd day of June in the Lord's year 2015. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is Recovery Monday, brought to you by the good folks at Powell CDC and Unity Point. This is also a day to remember. If you've never heard this radio station before and you're wondering where it came from, that's because in the last half hour, we have powered up the new transmitter to 80%. We'll be at 80% till early this evening or early tomorrow morning, and then we'll be at 100%. And this will be one of the most, I don't like the word powerful, but it will have the potential to reach 1.3 million sets of ears. And right now at 80%, we're probably crossed that million mark. Few radio stations can say they do that here in Des Moines. Obviously, WHO, obviously what I would call 107.5. It's called KISS now. But very few radio stations have the potential to reach as many listeners as this radio station does. And I thank you, God, for making that happen, and all of you who are listening. Very special guest today, Geral T. Blanchard. He is a trauma and, well, we're talking about trauma today. You're a psychotherapist?
Psychotherapist.
Okay.
Yes.
And his 2 books, you've got 3, actually. You've got Ancient Ways.
Actually, there's 8 of them out there now, but
my
the
gosh.
3 most recent ones are Ancient Ways, about how indigenous cultures, what they can teach us about trauma recovery. Ancient Ethics, the one in front of you is for healers, to help guide them in the therapeutic process in helping patients, using ancient wisdom matched with modern healing methods. And then Transcending Trauma has been out a little over a year, and that's about turning a traumatic experience into a growth experience.
All right. Now, where we left off before, by the way, I gave the wrong phone number, but you probably knew that. 244-0077. 515-244-0077. Phone lines are open. Feel free to call in and ask a question. The lovely Miss Maddie is producing this week as Ryan's on vacation, and she'll be glad to take your call. We were talking about that the results of trauma cannot be exclusively played out with drugs or alcohol. It could be played out with anger. It could be played out with over-shopping. It could be played out with an incredible appetite for sex. How about the opposite? How about I don't want to shop. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to have any sex with anybody. I don't want. I have no emotions. I can't get angry. I can't get happy. I'm just depressed.
You're bringing up a good point. Sometimes trauma reactions are like a pendulum swinging back and forth. You may develop an eating disorder as a result of trauma where you're anorexic, eat nothing, fade away in body weight, developing a disordered body image. On the other hand, you might binge and swing in the direction of overdoing things. Sexually, we see something similar. If someone's been sexually abused, and let's say that they develop a sexual addiction, they go through periods of swearing it off. I will not have sex ever again. It's awful. It's problematic. To periods of binging. Just so like an eating disorder, there's a sexual anorexia, and when the addiction is full-blown, there's a sexual compulsivity, an overuse of sex, a reliant use of sex to cover up my emotions. But always go back to that definition of addiction as being the excessive use of pleasure and excitement to obliterate emotional pain. That's what the experience or the drug being used is about.
All right, so it's not so someone who is chronically angry, nagging. I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, but just seem to be always upset with a very safe person, like a spouse or a working or a coworker or something. That's someone who could be just as easily getting drunk or high that night.
They could if they want to numb out that feeling of anger. But you know what I sometimes find is when we look at the brain of people who have been traumatized, and I'll use casual language, but their brains are oftentimes revved up from that early life experience when they were frightened, when they're agitated, and maybe at age 5, 6, and they never learned how to modulate their emotional reactions to events.
Oh, I like that phrase. Modulate their emotional reaction.
Yeah. So they swing from being pleasant one moment to vicious with their tongue the next. And they can't seem to regulate the level of emotionality that's going on inside of them. So if you say the wrong word that stimulates an unpleasant memory, or the wrong word about someone who maybe was abusive to them, suddenly they may swing into a rage, only to maybe hours later when their brain calms down to be peaceful and kind and loving again.
Dr. Geral Blanchard is our guest today, and this is Restoring Hope, Recovery Monday, brought to you by the good folks at Unity Point and Powell CDC. My co-host is Lila Stafford, who's a addiction counselor at Powell, and also Bob Montserrat, who is a retired. Are you still retired?
Yeah.
Okay. CSI agent. I think he'd like to go back to work, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Given what you're doing. He and his family bought a horse farm. How many horses you got?
Oh, 25 or so.
Wow. And he is Oliver Wendell Davis. That's what he is. He's a white-shirted suit guy who goes out and now drives a tractor around. And I've seen him on the tractor. It's true. Trauma. Let's unpack that word for a minute. Because as I sit here, just in the last 25 minutes in talking to you, you've helped me have a clearer picture of what trauma is. Trauma is sexual, it's experiential, emotional. It obviously can be physical, but it sometimes isn't obvious to somebody else that you've been traumatized.
Right. And it's trauma is such an individualized event. What may be traumatic for me might not be at all traumatic for you. What may be traumatic in one culture is not regarded as traumatic at all in another culture. So we have to look at people with individuality. And regrettably, so many of our responses and the educational efforts dealing with trauma do it generically. In our culture, we talk PTSD. We think of trauma and we think of a very specific response. Go with me to the high Andes of Peru and talk with the Q'ero people, a tribal people there, and they have an entirely different perspective on adverse life events. The concept of trauma is almost alien to them. So individuals respond differently to adversity, and cultures tell us how we can respond to adversity. Sometimes, if we don't individually tailor the treatment program for a person, they don't become healthier.
You have written down on some notes that you provided for me, trauma doesn't harm us nearly as much as our personalized and cultural response to trauma harms us.
Yeah, that's an important point that I always like to make, because we somehow believe in our culture that certain kinds of trauma are worse or more damaging than others. So if a tornado comes through and takes out the studio, that would be very traumatic. Or we believe that physical violence or sexual assault are the worst kinds of traumas. That's a little bit misguided. I'm not saying that those events don't harm or aren't frightening. But what I'm saying is how we respond to those events is far more telling of how we're going to recover than the event itself. An event does not hold trauma. Our reaction to an event may be traumatizing.
Okay, I get that. But if you're a child and you are traumatized by something, could your parents' reaction to that have an effect on how you're going to deal with it?
It's a really good question, because sometimes parents make traumas worse in the effort to make them better. Example, let's say a child has been sexually abused, and mom or dad learns of it, and dad learns of it one day, come home from work. He's irate. Who did this to my girl? Who did this to my daughter? And we've got this child in the home seeing dad just raging in the household. So now we've got a second layer of trauma being placed in this child's life. Then they say, well, we better call the police. So out come the police, and then a social worker, a child protection worker. Maybe criminal charges are brought, so then the child has to talk to attorneys about it over and over again. Then it goes to court, and the child may even have to testify in court about that experience. And then the court maybe rules against, the child, and the perpetrator of the crime is found to be not guilty. So then we have another level of trauma. On the other hand, sometimes parents respond to child sexual abuse by empowering their child, so that now the child has said something to daddy or mom. And I say to parents oftentimes, try not to overreact. In fact, try to underreact. Don't show a huge amount of emotion to your child other than let them know you're concerned, keep the daily routines going, but don't overreact. And look for opportunities in that child's way of coping to note the child's strength. So it may sound like this. Johnny, I'm just so proud of you that you told your school counselor about what your uncle did to you. That took courage. Man, I'm proud that you're my boy. And we don't want the child's life all chaotic after a traumatic event. Routines are healing for children. So we maintain the regular dinner times, the regular recreational schedule, the soccer schedule. So the child's life goes on in almost all areas as it did before. Routines and rituals are very healing for kids. So the parental response can add additional layers. The judicial response, I'm really critical here, but the judicial response to sex crimes in the courtroom can escalate the trauma for many individuals. But we have this notion that somehow when a jury who will see things fairly and justly comes down with a finding of guilt of our perpetrator, that somehow that will lift the weight off someone's
Yeah, I've
back.
never seen that.
I've never seen.
I've never have either. I usually guilty, not guilty. It's still there.
Yeah.
What about, I just want to ask real quick, what about parents that found out that somebody sexually abused their child and they refused to admit it? I mean, the parent just said, well, that didn't happen.
Yeah. If a child's reality is denied, they're going to be denied the chance to recover from the trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
If a child's trauma is denied,
the child will be denied the opportunity to recover from their trauma.
Oh, wow.
So I see that a lot by the time people get to us, that it's usually the mother. I'm not saying this always happens, but the mother keeps saying it didn't happen, or puts her head in the sand, or, pretends like they don't know anything's going on.
Yeah, your teacher would never do something like that. Certainly not.
All right, we're about coming down to a break. Did you, Bob? Go ahead.
No.
Oh, okay. We keep talking about sex. There are many other kinds of trauma, right?
Yes.
I mean, should we, when we think we're looking for trauma inside of a 50-year-old man, do we automatically look for the sexual abuse first?
You might look for the car wreck.
Okay.
That threw him through the car and into the ditch when his parents were killed in the accident. It may be that tornado that went through Creston, Iowa, and removed their home, and he's cowering in the bathtub in fear. It's the range of traumas is very personalized again.
All right. My guest is Dr. Geral Blanchard, Transcending Trauma, Post-Traumatic Growth Following Physical, Sexual, Emotional Abuse. That's one of his books. We'll talk about the other ones. This is Recovery Monday, live here, brought to you by Powell CDC.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing. We have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
22nd day of June on the Lord's year 2015. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is a historic day. We have been talking about this day for 4 years. We have known this day would come since last October. We predicted originally this day would happen around Easter. Then someone got smart. Someone a lot smarter than me said, let's just shoot for 4th of July. And here we are. On this 22nd day of June, the brand new radio station is born. Still at 99.3, but now able to be heard by over 1,000,003 sets of ears. In other words, 1,000,003 people across central Iowa and into other parts. So, God, thank you, and we appreciate your blessing on this radio station, and just allow your will to be done, please. Most importantly, allow your will to be done. Well, I think we're doing God's will today because we have a wonderful man, Geral Blanchard. Many books, 8 in all, but his latest, Transcending Trauma, Post-Traumatic Growth Following Physical, Sexual, and Emotional Abuse. And I want to move this conversation a little bit away from the sexual part, because there are tremendous amounts of trauma out there that have nothing to do with sexual abuse. And I don't want people to feel that they could use the services of someone like you, but know they either didn't have sexual abuse or would never, ever, ever admit to it. Now, I'm certain with proper therapy that would eventually come out, but a lot of people don't want to start there. Especially people of my generation, because that's still icky talk. You know, we don't talk about that kind of stuff. But Bob, you had a good question and a good case to bring up.
Well, my question had to do with primary and secondary trauma. I go to disasters, and I was traumatized basically on my first large-scale disaster, which was the United 232 air crash in Sioux City, and
and you went as a helper.
I went as a helper. I wasn't a victim, but I went there and saw a lot of death and dismemberment, and that really bummed me. So,
bummed you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, well, I did homicide investigations for 10 years prior to that.
Okay.
So I saw a lot of death through that. But this is the one that really got me and caused me a lot of distress, and I recovered from that.
Would you say you were traumatized?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I had little kids. I saw a lot of dead kids, and kids the same age as my kids, and so it was how I dealt with it, like you're talking about it.
How did you deal?
What it was doing to me. Well, when I was coming back home, I knew that, I had to hug my kids, and thank God that I still had them, because I saw families that lost their little kids. And I had a plan. My plan was I was going to tell the kids I loved them. I was going to hug them, hug my wife, and tell her I loved her. But I had no plan after that. So I accomplished that. And then I sat around, mulling that VCR or hard drive was, torturing me by what I saw and the smells and everything. And it took me quite a while to get through that. But I was traumatized, I would have to say. Well, other people, if they asked me what went on, my telling my stories would traumatize them. So even that would be I don't know if you'd call it a secondary, maybe for them. But
there's a term we tend to use called vicarious traumatization, where by being near a trauma or witnessing somebody else going through a trauma, I feel a great amount of their pain. And a lot of pain is awakened in me, maybe including some unfinished business, fears of loss or of losing a child or whatnot. So that secondary trauma could also be regarded as vicarious traumatization.
Mm-hmm. And I know that there are people that even watching news reports of, well, for instance, the Charleston situation, where people are just seeing it on the news is traumatizing them. I mean, not to a point that it may cause them to have to seek counsel, but it could. I don't know. And maybe, but people are being traumatized by what they see in the news. There's a lot of fear out there. People are afraid for their safety and all of that. So I'm looking at different aspects, not just something that happens to you personally, but a fear that you have that something will happen to you.
All right, now, and I want to get a clarification on that. So, Geral, you're saying, or he said, and you agree, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you just tell me. Can someone be traumatized by someone's story about how they were traumatized?
Absolutely.
Wow. Wow. Really?
Especially if that person is caring and attentive. If they're really listening and paying attention, they can feel it so deeply that it causes great unrest within them.
You can see that on the news the last week or so with the shootings down south and the reaction to certain people. I mean, it was, even when I watched them, I was thinking of trauma when they had just heard the news on the news.
But doesn't that how do I say this? So we're all traumatized.
No, everybody takes it differently.
That's right. We all have different ways of responding to egregious or terrible events in the world. We don't all, get shaken from our stabile core. Some do, some don't. It doesn't mean some are strong, some are weak. It just means we have unique and different ways of reacting to things. Some of us stuff and postpone our reactions to things. But you must remember, there are cultures where even the concept of trauma is kind of confounding because they're not used to powerful, long-lasting effects. But Bob, I'm wondering if you were going somewhere further with your discussion about primary and secondary trauma. I don't want to lead you away from
Well, no, I was wondering if there's a difference, and I think what you are saying is that trauma is trauma. Doesn't matter if you're the one that personally experienced something or in it or responded to it.
It goes back to that comment I made earlier about the event itself may not be the traumatizing agent. It's how I think about it and respond to it that may traumatize me. Mm-hmm. It's very personalized, very individualized.
So I'm in charge of whether I feel trauma or not?
Not always, but you can increasingly develop more and more control over your response to trauma by, number one, becoming more awake or more aware to it. There's a movement in the psychological field right now called mindfulness therapy, and that's about being more of an observer and an investigator of things in life, almost like the eagle's perspective, hovering above, looking down on what's happening. And as you were saying, Lila, earlier, having a bit of detachment. Mm-hmm. You're able to stand back from things a little bit and observe them with a little more clarity. So I can choose to hone my skills at being a good investigator and observer of processes rather than just getting swept off my feet. When I was coming over here with Lila earlier today, we were talking about an NPR radio interview I woke up to the other morning. And it was an elementary school teaching her children in school about mindfulness therapy. We have elementary school kids who are trying to explain what is mindfulness. And many of us would struggle to...
I don't think I could.
Yeah, and let alone say, what is Buddhist philosophy? And people say, I don't know. But this child on the air said, well, our teacher teaches us mindfulness, and I think it's thinking about your thinking. And it's like the child nailed it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not just running amok with my thoughts, taking something I think is a literal truth. Just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. And these little children are realizing that sometimes we lie to ourselves, we distort, we awfulize, we catastrophize, and we have to be very careful about
awfulize. I like that word.
And we do that without even knowing it. So the more control we have over our thought processes, and we don't wait to graduate school to develop them, they're even doing it now in elementary schools, to help children sit with uncomfortable emotions a little bit longer than they might be accustomed to. Some schools are using yoga to help kids during recess time to relax and calm down and sit with discomfort a little bit longer each time, so we can develop skills to investigate pain in a way that doesn't sweep us off our feet.
Geral Blanchard is our guest. Transcending Trauma, Post-Traumatic Growth Following Physical, Sexual, Emotional Abuse. We'll come back with our last segment right after this, live here on The Truth Brought to you by Unity Point.
Another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
All right, 10 minutes for the top of the hour. We're going to get right back to business here. Bob, you had a question for our guest, Geral Blanchard, who wrote a book, Transcending Trauma, Post-Traumatic Growth Following Physical, Sexual, and Emotional Abuse. And Lila's laughing at me. That's all right. Go ahead, Robert.
Traumatizing.
Yeah, I'm traumatized now.
Yeah. When people are traumatized, obviously they go to seek help. But I guess the question is it possible that the help could be more hurtful?
The help can be a hindrance to recovery sometimes. Sometimes the help can be worse than the abuse itself. For instance, if somebody said, I understand you were touched inappropriately by your uncle, using sex again as the example, and you need to go see your pastor about it. And then the pastor says, I'll talk to you about this, we'll work on it, and the pastor does something sexualized or is inappropriate in some way toward the child. Now the so-called treatment is like not only a double betrayal, but it was so unexpected when this person was named as a helper that now it's a betrayal to the maximum degree. Or someone may be feeling a lot of emotions welling up and coming up after some maybe traumatic car accident, let's say. And they go to see a doctor, a psychiatrist, and they said, well, you need to be on some medications to calm your emotions. So we'll give you some Xanax or maybe some Klonopin, some mood stabilizers, maybe an antipsychotic. Pretty soon you're dependent on those. Pretty soon the Zyprexa has caused you to gain 60 pounds. Now you have diabetes. And it's like now your very health and life is being threatened. So that what was done in the name of treatment can be the cause or result in the development of a new trauma. We call that iatrogenic abuse, where the treatment is as bad or maybe even worsens the original event. So it requires us, I wrote the book Ancient Ethics for Today's Healers, to call attention to what we do in the name of healing. Like Hippocratic Oath says, first, doctor, do no harm. That's got to be our guiding first philosophy. I must not do anything that will compound the harm that has occurred here.
So you would want, in the instance of drugs, that'd be a very last resort.
It's going to vary from person to person.
Yeah.
But there's such a big drug industry right now pushing and peddling medicines that aren't very helpful and aren't based in science. And we grab for a pill. You know, there's that serenity prayer, the new one. God grant me a magic bullet pill to take away my addiction to magic bullet substances or magic bullet solutions. Sometimes we want a pill to make everything better. We don't want to do the hard work of recovery.
All right, now, Lila, you were talking earlier. We got to be careful our time here, but you were talking earlier that your mother was killed at age 12, and you didn't. Tell me if I get this wrong, but you didn't really realize you were traumatized until much, much, much later in life.
Right. I mean, I knew I was traumatized, but it just came out in a weird way when I was older. Even after she was killed by a teenage driver in Mexico, and so years later, I just it's the realization that accidents can happen, that they can happen to anybody. Because to me, before 12, those things happen on TV. They happen to other people, but not to my family. Mm-hmm. So now the reality of accidents is so prevalent in my mind that I think it's going to happen to me all the time. I drive everywhere. You know that because
you drove me here today.
You here.
Yeah.
I will not get in a car with anyone else. It has kept me from doing a lot of spontaneous, fun things because of the story I'm telling myself. You know, that accidents happen, and so they'll happen to me.
Yeah. I noticed you used the word it. It has caused me too.
Mm-hmm.
And I would challenge you in a most respectful way to ask, could it be that the messages to yourself can cause a fear to escalate? Because if my story of my trauma is such that it says, I can't let anyone else ever drive, mm-hmm. It may be that the original trauma is compounded by the story I tell myself about it. So I'm not in any way trying to dismiss what happened as severe.
You don't ride with anybody else?
No.
Even Jim?
No. And when we go to California, I mean, any place we've ever gone, I drive the whole way. We've been to marriage counselors about this. Yeah.
Wow.
I drive everywhere and the whole way.
So what would you do about that? Besides take away her driver's license.
The first real question is, what would she want to do about that? And could I offer that? The last thing I want to do is impose a solution on
See, that was
someone.
my question kind of originally, is like, do I want to just sit in this? I don't know. You know, I mean, I've sit in the trauma, which it causes me problems daily.
Yeah. If the problem has enough consequences to it, at some point people want to attack it to address it. And so then what we would do is what we call desensitization work, where little by little, doctors would call it titrate, when you increase your medicine a little stronger, stronger. We have events that you would engage in that enable you to turn over control to a trusted person. Maybe just driving, having a therapist drive you, like this afternoon, across the parking lot till we get to the main drag, and then you take over. That's called progress.
And then next time it's a little farther, a little farther.
Yeah.
There are 2 people I'll ride with.
Your daughter?
No, 3. No. They're both of my brothers. Both of my brothers I will, because I trust them. I've ridden with them enough, and I don't know. I feel safe with them. And my brother-in-law.
But your own husband?
No.
See, Bob, I think what we do is we grab Lila after this.
Make me ride with you.
Put her in the back of the car.
That's what we call iatrogenic abuse.
Yeah.
Where the treatment causes more problems.
Oh, so that's not good. Oh, okay. All right. We should have said this at the beginning because we're basically out of time, but how do I know if I've been traumatized? What are my symptoms?
There can be a variety of them. You tend to feel powerless many times, and so you develop anxiety, sleep disorders from the powerlessness. You might have been betrayed by someone in a trauma, so then you can't trust. Maybe you can't trust other people to drive. You can't trust a partner in some ways. You might have been physically abused or sexually traumatized, so someone raises their hand and you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be hit. It may show up as in a physical way. It may have to do with self-esteem, the trauma. If I was made to feel dirty by, let's say, somebody who sexually assaulted or raped me, then I might have very low self-esteem, and it may show up in that way, like I'm just unworthy of kind treatment even. You know, I think of a woman who came to me. She just hated it when her boyfriend would send her flowers. And it was so associated with betrayal and manipulation in the past. So what I had her do as a result of her therapy was to have flowers sent to her home by herself.
Oh.
And she initially thought, that's silly. But the more she thought about it, she went ahead and did it. And she said, you know what? Those flowers seem to last forever.
Oh. I know that story.
Hopefully, Geral will be back. We've been talking about trauma. You can reach him here in Des Moines, Geral T. Blanchard. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Thanks for listening. Remember, as always, I just ask you to think of somebody you need to forgive and forgive them today. And as you forgive, you shall be forgiven. I'll see you at Hope.